Streaming. I think we are live. Live.
Are we?
I don't know. Usually
It's
it gets me
always the
saying that
question.
every week.
Yeah.
We are now streaming on Facebook. We are now streaming on YouTube. Maybe. Sending data. We'll see. Maybe it'll stream to YouTube.
Hey,
Well, hello,
everybody.
friends.
Yep, we're on.
Man, we're on. Does it sound like? Bless you.
Excuse me. Oh, right. Yeah, it's working.
Can you? All right, perfect.
Yep.
I heard you sneeze.
Heard myself sneeze. Well, good. Well, we have a few minutes. You have a few minutes to grab a friend, grab a drink, and grab your friend a drink, but don't grab your friend's drink.
Yeah.
Unless you're bringing it to them.
Yeah. And we had some friends grab us some drinks.
Yeah. Judy Calvert.
In Texas.
Shout out to Judy Calvert in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
Who sent us some Deep Ellum IPA by way of our friends, the Hardings.
Yeah.
Which brings up a great idea. If you...
That's so good. That's delicious.
It's very good.
I like that. It's citra hopped.
If you would like to sponsor drinks for a night of Talking Toast, we will gladly accept them. Brilliant idea on Judy Calvert's part.
Thank you.
And
Judy
just
Calvert
so
in
gracious. And Judy, maybe one day we can meet.
Yes.
We'd love to.
Absolutely. So let us know where you're viewing from tonight. I need to make sure that the chat is working. And let's see here. You have closed a dockable window. Docs. Chat. Let's see what it's got here. Nope, still spinning. I think maybe it's working. Let's see.
It is. We've got people on there.
Yeah.
It's good. Life is good, y'all. It is crisp outside.
Crisp.
Oh, how lovely was it to walk outside this morning?
21228, Mary Young.
Hey, yo!
Happy belated birthday to you, Mary Young.
Bill Harding says it is a really nice beer.
It is very nice. Thank you so much.
It is.
for
It
bringing
is.
that back
And
for
I'm
us.
guessing Bill and Bobby had to bring it back either in suitcase or car. But either way, it seems a little bit cumbersome, and we're
very
grateful for you packing it away for us.
Good stuff. Oh, man. Well, we're here on Talking Toast. And usually what we do on Talking Toast on Tuesday nights is we peel back the curtain on the creative process that is the sermon writing, or for us, homilies. We do 2 10-minute homilies usually. But this Sunday, we are actually out of town. And we
Why?
have, I'm going to say in a minute, and we have a really wonderful guest proclaimer named Michael Page, who is usually at Shepherd Park Christian Church. He's going to be filling in for us on Sunday. And so we thought that tonight we would do something a little bit different and a little bit special. And so we are really glad that you are on tonight.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what else. Well, we start every week by asking what is sustaining you.
You've got to go first. What's sustaining
What is
you?
sustaining you? I just saw Bill Harding post, turned off our AC and opened the windows, and my dad said top-down weather in South Carolina.
I was
Y'all,
like, top down, is that like trickle down economics weather?
No.
No, it's top down convertible
top.
weather. Got it.
Yeah. Y'all, the weather outside is just amazing.
Delightful.
We woke up this morning, you were like, I've got to put on
Judy
a long
Calvert
sleeve
commented.
Yay!
Cheers, Judy.
Cheers, Judy. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah.
here it just feels like it feels like fall.
It feels like fall.
And I'm so happy.
John and I were talking
Alexa
today.
said they ate on the porch. Yeah.
I'm like tearing up thinking about it. I am a much nicer person when the weather is cool.
I'm tearing up thinking about it.
It was so nice today. And I just like sat outside this morning, and it's such a delight.
It was great.
Such a delight.
It was great.
Yeah.
So I hope that some of these folks are sharing what's sustaining them. If it's not then please share by all means the weather and what's sustaining you. If it is the weather, that's great.
It sounds like people up and down the coast. We've got Georgia, South Carolina, enjoying the outside as well.
Texas.
Yeah.
This is good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's good.
Good stuff.
Yep. So, what is sustaining? You said what's sustaining?
I think the weather is just like
not college football.
Well, I'll get to that. I'll come back
Okay.
to that. Maybe I'll piggyback on what you say.
Okay.
What's sustaining you, Katie?
College football. So last weekend, I went with my friend Rachel Pennington, who is chef and writer extraordinaire. I'll tell you what's not sustaining me: ill-prepared football teams.
Yes,
And
I'm wearing a
autocorrect.
lacrosse shirt tonight.
For a reason. So Rachel and I went to, she very graciously offered me a ticket to the West Virginia Penn State game, and we had so much fun. And I feel like I am a de facto West Virginia fan from now on.
You're near.
I'm a mountaineer.
It's near and dear.
Near and dear to my heart. I learned some words and phrases
That we can't repeat.
that we cannot repeat on Talkin' Toast. But man, it was fun. And it was such a different environment than what I'm used to. And I think every college football fan needs to get out to West Virginia for a game.
Yes. I want to do that. I
Yeah.
have not been to Morgantown, so I want to do that. But only if Rachel will have me. I want to go with someone who knows their way around and that kind of thing. Yeah. So piggybacking on that, ill-prepared football teams are not what's sustaining me either. My Tigers got walloped. Really, the second half. The first half we did pretty well. I was proud of them.
Yeah.
Second half, not so much. And
It's a similar story for West Virginia. The
Yeah.
first half they played great. Then we had the 3-hour rain delay and watched trash cans blow up mountains and got to watch people take little power naps in the practice facility.
yeah,
And they came back out and they were like, no, not going to play today.
Molly Maguire's Porch. That's a good restaurant.
It is,
Yep,
it
on
is.
Wilmington Island. Well, so we've shared what's sustaining us. There are other things that sustain us, and so I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight a little bit.
Listen, if Barack Obama can put out a reading list every summer of his favorite books, so can Katie and John.
That's exactly right.
We should also put out a playlist like he does.
We should. Maybe we should go like back and forth, like
Yes.
song.
Maybe the next time we take a Sunday off, we do a Talkin' Toast that is playlist oriented.
Sounds great.
Music that is sustaining
Let's
us.
do it. Let's do it.
Yep. So in case you haven't guessed, this time around, we're not preaching this week, but we wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the way we feed our souls and our minds and in our reading list.
It's going to be good. I'm excited about it. Bill Harding said our granddaughter graduated from West Virginia.
Yes.
And
Make up their own football words.
yes,
Words.
that's great.
Yes,
They
that
can
is true.
tailgate. Yes.
Yes, they can tailgate.
So tonight we're going to share, and Rachel, I'm really glad that you're on here because I've got one that I think will be near and dear to your heart.
mentioned
if you
it
haven't.
to her.
Okay, sounds good. But we're going to share a few books that are sustaining us right now and that we're reading. And maybe they're not sustaining us, but it's something that is giving us, it's thought-provoking.
Well, I think so. Here's what I think. We have this holy book that is really a compilation. It's really a library. And you can look at that as like, this is the hard and fast. These are the 66 books that are included these are the only 66 books that are sacred. But
Unless you're Catholic. And then there's the Apocrypha.
and then you have a few more.
Yeah.
But I think John, we kind of approach it differently. That the written word in general is sacred, and stories are sacred. And isn't the Bible just a compilation of stories, right?
Yes. I worked on a staff one time where there was a rule in wedding ceremonies that only sacred songs could be used in the wedding ceremony. And I immediately said, like, okay, well, who's going to judge what's sacred and what's not in this? Because and then another staff member said, yeah, I mean, if they're using their God-given talents to write these songs, like, who are we to say what's sacred and not? So anyway, we're not necessarily making that argument tonight, but we are sharing some different things that are
but I do think that I mean, I'm not making any argument, but I do think that there is something to learning and being open to wisdom of the written word.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a lowercase w for those of you who are wondering.
Yeah. And for me, it's audible, so it's oral.
The spoken word.
It's the spoken word. Yeah. So I feel like you should go first tonight.
Okay, so we've got...
and
This was your idea. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, which is different. Like,
I know.
Who would have thought that would be me?
John said this to me when we were trying to figure out like what we were going to do for Talking Toast tonight.
It's Margot from Cottageville.
Yeah.
Hey, Margot.
When we were... Judy said must have been hanging with the Lutherans.
Lutherans.
Yes.
Yes.
Lutherans know some words.
Mm-hmm.
When we were at lunch today, you were like, we should do this. And I was like... Say more. Like, never have you looked more attractive. Just kidding. But really.
But she's not.
So, we both picked out 2 books to bring to the table tonight to talk about what they're meaning to us, what we're learning from them, what we enjoy about them, and maybe you'll consider going to pick them up.
And if not,
or maybe you won't.
Maybe you have something that's sustaining you that you're reading right now that you need to chime in and say. Or if you have a question along these lines, like if something sparks your interest and you want to ask. Have you finished either one of these?
No.
Okay, so we're in the middle of reading these.
Yep.
So,
I'm almost. You can see my bookmark here.
Yeah, you're getting close.
I'm almost done with that one.
Okay.
So up first, not necessarily in first place, but up first.
In no particular order.
In no particular order. Mostly because I think it has something to do with what John and I are going to talk back and forth about. Is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This has gotten all kinds of buzz, particularly in this time when Hillbilly Elegy has been in the news, and when narratives of Appalachia have been in the news. This is a really interesting read, mainly because it just follows this young man, Demon Copperhead, through his life, and so it's kind of compared to the David Copperfield, the famous Dickens book that follows him through life.
Not the magician, sorry.
Is there a magician? See, I live under a pop culture rock.
No,
Get me talking about books and I can do it.
That's 80s, 90s pop culture.
Yeah, see,
You're
no.
fine.
Yeah.
I immediately thought, since I saw the magician before I read Charles Dickens, it was always David Copperfield for me is always illusionist. Go ahead, keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's like, what is David Copperfield?
So Demon Copperhead is fascinating, and Barbara Kingsolver, I think, has a really interesting perspective of rural America and the systems that go in that intertwine to prevent people from having access to economic mobility and different resources that help them lead healthy and well lives. There's this one point today when I was reading where, oh my gosh, it's such a good line. They're talking about, so at one point, this is early on in the book, so I'm not going to ruin anything, but at one point, Demon is living with a foster home. He's young, he's like 11 or something, and he's living with this foster home. And they start experimenting with pills. And he says, a 10-year-old getting high on pills. Foolish children. So it's narrated by Demon. This is what we're meant to say. Look at their choices, leading to a life of ruin. But lives are getting lived right now, this hour, down in the dirty cracks between the toothbrush nighty nights and the full grocery carts, where those words don't pertain. Children, choices, ruin. That was the labor and materials we were given to work with. An older boy that never knew safety himself trying to make us feel safe. We had the moon in the window to smile on us for a minute and tell us the world was ours, because all the adults had gone off somewhere and left everything in our hands. And so it really gives you a sense of, like, I think we have this notion in the United States that poverty is a choice, that poverty is a result of a series of bad choices. But that is not the case. Poverty is a result of intentional disinvestments and disinvestments of place. And so you think about, like, big companies, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but big companies pulling out of an area, that is disinvestment. So investment is when they come in and they start offering jobs and all of that. Disinvestment wrecks communities, and oftentimes those communities are blamed for something that they had no choice in. And then that lack of access just compounds itself. Yeah. We see this in urban Baltimore. We see this in any city today, that poverty is seen as a series of bad choices, but in reality, it is intentional disinvestments on behalf of the powerful.
And there's always more to the story.
Yes.
No matter what. Yeah. Well, I think it's so expensive to be. Chantel says it's so. Excuse me. It's so expensive to be poor. I remember paying a ton of money for a Rent-A-Center AC unit. Mm-hmm. You end up spending so much more when you can't afford things. Yeah. Cumberland, Maryland, the unemployment office was permanently closed, Julia said.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're exactly right.
Both of those.
It takes so much energy to be impoverished in this country. Yeah. It takes so much. I mean, we can go down the list.
And for example, credit scores. Credit scores were developed as a mechanism of racial kind of oppression. And did you know, I'm doing a little bit of research for a big project that I'm doing at work, on place-based, this big place-based project that the governor has unveiled and all of this. Anyway, did you know that Baltimore was the first city in the nation in 1910 to have a racial anti-black legislation around housing.
Wow.
Baltimore was the first city. Not Atlanta, not Greensboro, not Raleigh, not a southern city, Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going along with that line, I think she might need some help if you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
Going along that same line, I'm going to try and do something fancy here and put in a book. Yes. So let's see if we're live, so I don't know if this is working or not. I'm going to put this over
you covered your face.
I covered your face.
Oh,
This book is called Rednecks by Taylor Brown. And he is an author that we met. Whenever we lived in Savannah, and he is incredible. Just has like a way with a phrase.
He's a disciple of Faulkner.
Yeah, and I've talked about him a little bit before. I think whenever we were talking about Pat Conroy along the way, so you may have heard me talk about him before. But yeah, the book is called Rednecks, and it's Taylor Brown, and it's billed as a novel, which is fine. But there's so much more to this that I think that it was more classified as a novel for the publishing side of things, because it's actually really amazing creative nonfiction. The story, of course, there are some stories that are made up within it, but what this book is talking about, and you see the red bandana in the middle of this, What this book is talking about are the coal miners who had an uprising, and in this uprising, they wore red bandanas to mark themselves, and that's how we got the term rednecks. It's also interesting because this was a time period after World War One. A lot of these coal miners actually fought in World War One and came back home and didn't have money, didn't have resources, and ended up going to work for the company, for the mine, in these areas all along Appalachia. And in it, you said, Cumberland, Maryland would be included in that. It's this area that was so reliant upon the one industry. And it's not just reliant upon one industry. Everything around around the town revolved around that industry. Coal miners were given credit at the company store. You've probably heard this: "I sold my soul to the company store." They were given credit at the company store, not payment to be able to go to their own grocery stores, those kinds of things. And so everything was just this one big cycle.
It's like corporate greed has always been a problem.
And what ends up happening in this book, and this is the creative nonfiction part, it talks about the Battle of Blair Mountain. And I didn't know anything about the Battle of Blair Mountain until this book, and then there's a podcast called History That Doesn't Suck. And it's a professor out of Utah who does this incredible podcast. But it talks about the Battle of Blair Mountain. And what you were talking about, that corporate greed, all these folks, there was a phrase in there that they said, make sure that the mules have helmets when they're in the mines. Because for the corporate folks, the mule is harder to replace than the human being. Meaning they can just get the human being,
they can replace the human being right away.
and not only replace, but then they're owed to the company store and everything else.
Yeah.
Whereas the mule is
they have to spend time,
they have to spend
training.
Money, resourcing and everything on the mule. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, fascinating book. But and thinking about, like, you're saying Hillbilly Elegy, written around the same area. This is another side to the story that I don't think a lot of people know about. And this was the mining uprising was actually put down by the U.S. government, who was in cahoots. So the Army, in cahoots with these big time coal mining operations, because they needed the resources from the coal mine. I mean, it was all kind of entangled together. So, yeah, Taylor Brown. Phenomenal.
Yeah, incredible. He's got this great book called Pride of Eden. That's one of my favorite books that I've read. It's about, it started with this short story that took place in the town next to where we used to live in Douglasville, Georgia, which is kind of metro Atlanta area. And it starts with this great scene where a man comes driving up to the fire station in a hurry and jumps out and he says, "Have you seen a tiger around here?" The fire chief says, "Not again." And it just goes on from there, but it's a fascinating read. Again, lots of really interesting wisdom that come from that. Now, I do want to say this, and I think we've mentioned Hillbilly Elegy twice tonight.
Yeah.
And here's my non-Appalachian take on the situation. I read it. I have read a couple of reviews of it. I've read, a lot of people have a lot of opinions. One of the things that I'm learning...
You're shaking the camera every time you...
One of the things that I have learned, and I'm still learning, as a grant writer, as a justice seeker, as a pastor, is the need for asset-based language. And what I mean by that is, instead of saying, these poor people in this area, they're taken advantage of by X, Y, and Z, or they've succumbed to the opioid crisis, and they've done this, and this is all the stuff that they had to overcome. Instead of talking about that, those people have dignity. Those people have beauty. Those people have agency to determine what their next steps are going to be. Now, what I kind of got a sense of, and what a lot of people kind of, I understand, writing about different cultures in general, is dicey, because we have tendencies to say like, oh, look at these poor people. I struggle with this as a grant writer who writes a lot about people who are very different from me in Baltimore City. But I think what Barbara Kingsolver gets right is she humanizes their voices, and she gives them agency, or she highlights their agency that is not necessarily displayed in other memoirs or novels about the areas.
And I think what Taylor Brown is getting at is, this is an American story. It's the shock from these people, who a lot of whom fought in World War I, representing their country, come back home, and then they're fighting against their own country in this
again. Yeah.
And it's their shock of, wait, ours is an American story too.
Yes.
Yep. And so, yeah. Anyway, and also, there, if you listen to the Audible side of that, or the audiobook, Mother Jones is throughout this story, and Mother Jones has this great Irish accent, and it's just amazing. So yeah. I didn't realize. I knew Mother Jones from the publication, but I didn't know the story of Mother Jones, so that's really helpful in this too.
And I defer to a lot of Appalachian writers on this topic. Namely, Rachel Pennington has some incredible essays.
Yes.
Just gonna say.
Yep.
My dad said, so my parents lived in West Virginia for several years. 20% of the citizens do not have running water. And a lot of that is a result of disinvestment.
Yeah.
It's no fault of the citizens of McDowell County. It's the big businesses that have moved out and intentionally disinvested. And we can get into that later, but yeah.
All right. You've done a book. I've done a book. You want to go back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So this is like shifting directions a little bit. This book that I have been reading is kind of, I don't know, post-apocalyptic. This Great Hemisphere by Matteo Ascaripour. Matteo is a writer who got his start with a book called Black Buck, which was also fantastic, but this is like 600 times better.
You loved Black Buck.
I loved Black Buck. Yeah. But this, you really see that he's honed his craft. And the premise, it's very fascinating because Matteo is an African American man. Excuse me. He writes kind of at the center of like racial critique of systems of oppression. And so this whole book is based on this post-apocalyptic time when there are 4 hemispheres in the United States, in the world, and the hemispheres, this one hemisphere, the northwestern hemisphere, where all the action takes place, is split into the dominant people and the invisibles.
Mom, I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
And the invisibles.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll go.
Sorry about that. We're still testing out bedtimes and such. Hang on one second. We're still testing out bedtimes and figuring out how we're going to do this. So I'll let Katie come back and talk about the Great Hemisphere. If there are any other if you have any book suggestions that you would like to make along the way, we'd love to know it. All right. So my other book that I am reading right now is a book by Sophie should be teaching this hour. Yeah. This is you may have heard us interview Rob Bell back in March with his book Where'd You Park Your Spaceship. We loved Where'd You Park Your Spaceship. Incredible novel, and it was really his first kind of novel like this. It's fascinating, spiritual, really, really interesting. He has just released a new Where'd You Park Your Spaceship Book 2, and there's only one Noon Ye. So in Where'd You Park Your Spaceship, one of the characters is Noon Ye, and so the first part of the story it tells in Where'd You Park Your Spaceship Part 1. It tells the story of oh my gosh, I just had this brain moment. Anyway, it tells the story from one perspective of Heen Gruber's. Thank you. And it tells Heen's story. This new one is telling the story of Noon Ye, and I am a big Rob Bell fan, so it kind of getting to interview him and getting to talk to him about that book was really fascinating and incredible. Like I said, I usually do audiobooks, and this isn't out on audiobook yet, so I'm reading through and working on Noon Ye, and that's been really life-giving so far. So we're having a lot of fun with that. Yeah. So I stopped and went to Where'd You Park Your Spaceship?
Okay.
And then Sophie,
Go
back over there. And then you were in the middle of talking about this great hemisphere.
So
Sorry.
it's fascinating because with this great hemisphere, there are the invisibles who are oppressed, and they are put together in camps that are underinvested, and they don't have healthy foods. They have what it kind of sounds like the equivalent of McDonald's. And that's pretty much all they have. No grocery stores, no fresh foods, none of that. And it feels a lot like, if anybody's familiar with Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man, definitely inspired by that. And so fascinating read, seeking liberation in this book is A, being seen, and B, engaging with joy. And there's something compelling about that message.
Absolutely. The joy side of that really came out as Heen Gruber's discovers himself in the first book. So I'm excited to see how all this plays out in the second book with this. And it's so completely different stuff that we're all reading. Julia Utley came in and said, I'm on book 4 of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I'd love to hear about that.
Cool.
Yep. And and Bill Harding said love Spaceship. That was a good book. Well, we need to go ahead and end tonight because
once again
we've got some interruptions, and we'll figure out. We're still learning
Stick
what
with
this
us.
new. Stick with us. And so we've done some talking tonight. We need to do some toasting. Do you want to start us off with a toast?
Yeah. Go now, friends, and seek out wisdom wherever it may be. Open your mind and hearts and hands to wisdom in stories, wisdom in the written word, wisdom wherever you may find it.
And may you find along the way that there is a deeper story, and there are always things that are good and loving and true right below the surface.
Cheers.
Cheers, friends. Yeah, we tried with melatonin before. We're trying to move on. Anyway, yes. Thank you, Chantel. Cheers to Sophie, too. Yep, she's doing just fine. All right. Well, friends, it was a good week. Thank you for joining us. We won't be in church on Sunday. Thank you, Judy, for the beer and for joining in and for good conversation.
But next week, we are starting a special series.
Yes.
And that series might have something to do with the little blue dog from Australia. Do, 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 do.
That's right. For the next 3 weeks, we talk about Bluey, Sophie.
We might need some help on that.
That's right.
All right. We'll talk to you all later. Take care, everybody.
Have a good night. Have a good week. And go football.
Don't underperform.
That's right. Go Tigers. I need you to beat a school from Appalachia.
Oh, come
Oh, man.
on.
That's bad. This Appalachian State. Okay.